Let's check in with Martin Indyk, the former U.S. Special Envoy for the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations, the peace process under President Barack Obama, also a two-term ambassador to Israel under Bill Clinton. Your perspective here, Martin, it does seem like you'd rather be Joe Biden right now than Donald Trump, just emotionally watching the results come in. Biden seems to be in a better position right now. But what do you think it means for the chance of more peace, more normalization, and the timetable for these announcements? Trump says there's 5 ready to go if he wins the election this week. What do you think the timetable will be if it's a Biden White House?
Well, first of all, I think it's a question of mathematics at this stage. Biden, in the states where Biden is ahead, given the way the mail-in voting goes disproportionately in his favor, he's likely to lengthen that lead. So therefore, I would assume conservatively that he can lose Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, even where Trump is ahead. But because he's in the lead in Michigan and Nevada and Wisconsin, I think it's fair to assume that he will win those. And with the result that you just announced, he gets to 270. So I think he has a path to victory that may turn out.
So what do you think that makes then? What does that mean for the chance of more normalization in a Biden White House, possibly? What does it mean for more countries making peace with Israel?
Look, normalization was embraced by Biden very clearly when the Israel-UAE deal was announced. And that's not surprising because normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab world has been long-standing bipartisan policy. Certainly it was pursued by Bill Clinton in the heady days of Yitzhak Rabin, of blessed memory today, especially. It's his 25th anniversary of his assassination. And it was pursued by Obama and Kerry and Clinton, Hillary Clinton as well. So there's no resistance to the idea that Israel should have normalized relations with its Arab neighbors. It's a kind of basic right of all states to be recognized by its neighbors. And so I think that Biden will want to push this. It's referred to around him as low-hanging fruit, and certainly much easier to move on than the Israeli-Palestinian issue.
Okay, hang on for a second. Deputy Mayor, I want to get your take here on the process. You're now the co-founder of the UAE-Israel Business Council. We've seen the warmth and the friendship between the Emiratis and Israelis just in recent weeks, how quickly, when the chance for peace was there, how quickly the ties are flourishing. What do you think that means in the chance that other countries will follow suit, and the sense among the Palestinians that the Gulf is betraying them? It's a stab in the back, to use that phrase.
Well, I think that the way that both sides have embraced it means that we were both very ready for this and thirsty for this. I was just in Dubai a couple of weeks ago, and I was really embraced. I've never had the same hospitality anywhere that I received in Dubai. And I think there's a lot of factors involved here. I think quietly there were a lot of Israelis already doing business in the Gulf. We estimate that about 250 Israeli companies were already working and operating there. We guess that this is going to double every month, and it's going to be amazing. But I really, truly believe that there was a readiness. And when you understand why, you have to look back 10 years, and you see there was a change in policy of the king, of the ruler, not to antagonize against Israel. I'm very much into what we do with the Palestinian school book, because it's really bringing in poison into young minds. And if we want to talk about peace, we have to start now. Stop the indoctrination against us in the Palestinian school book. When I was there, I asked my new friends, my new Emirati friends, when did incitement against Israel stop in your school book? And they told me about 10 years ago. And so there's a lot of things that were precipitating this normalization. Of course, Bahrain came along. And I do believe that there's a momentum in itself. There's a momentum happening that nobody can stop. I don't see why Biden would stop. But, you know, it's interesting to hear Mr. Indyk, Ambassador Indyk, talk about the fact that Obama was pro this normalization when his close colleague, John Kerry, said very clearly that there will be never any normalization with the Arab world without solving the Palestinians. So that doctrine has proved completely erroneous. And what I expect now, please God, from what any White House, especially the Biden White House, which didn't initiate the Abraham Accords, is of course the same hand-holding and the same support that Trump, along with Jared Kushner, gave to this momentum of normalization in the Gulf.
Mr. Indyk, do you have a response to that? I mean, John Kerry is now infamous in Israel quip that, mark my words, there will not be peace with Arab neighbors until we make resolution on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Do you have a response?
Sure. I mean, he was capturing the reality that was the case in those days and was the case until the Crown Prince of the Emirates broke the mold. That was the unified position. It was the Emirati position of the Arab League as captured in the Arab Peace Initiative. However, I think it's important to note something that was not generally known, is that Kerry was pushing the Arab states on a very different issue, which was considered in those days Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel's priority. And you'll remember it, Aaron. It was that he wanted us to get the Arab states to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And that was the priority that Kerry was working on at that point, quietly and with some success with the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Jordanians. But it was all done in the context of the effort that he was undertaking at that time, working with Prime Minister Netanyahu to try to advance, make some progress on the Israeli-Palestinian front, where we were engaged in final status negotiations.
Professor Uzi Rabi, I see you shaking your head